The work of startups as well as entrepreneurs is vitally important, and today at the beginning of the Startup20 Summit we've heard just how critical it is, especially in an economy like ours where we need growth as well as job creation. But to take us through, of course, some of the work that her department is doing when it comes to this summit, I'm turning now to the Minister of Small Business Development, Ms. Stella Ndabeni. Minister, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. The beginning of the Startup20 Summit. Talk to us about, the work your department is doing to bridge the gap between entrepreneurs and the capital they so desperately need.
Well, firstly, let me talk about the Startup20 Summit itself. As you know, that South Africa is hosting the G20 as the presidency this year. So we were mandated to coordinate the Startup20 engagement group. I want to emphasize why it's important that as government we took that decision, because this is the third Startup20 conference that we are having, but it's the first of its kind in the African soil. But most importantly, the number that we've managed to pull in terms of the countries that have come here to South Africa to support the startup work is more than 41 countries today. And in June, when I reported with the ministers only, we had more than 60 ministers. This tells you of what the country and the world is looking at in terms of South Africa, in terms of the leadership that must be provided in the Startup20. And of course, worldwide, entrepreneurs are complaining about the lack of access to finance, the lack of reform agenda that talk to the financial models that are in place, but most importantly, the red tapes that continue to be there and the access to markets. This is what entrepreneurs are gathering to discuss today. You will recall that in the last 2 weeks, we then again had a press conference where we were handing over the policy documents that have been a result of the work that had been done by the Startup20, the work that will be handed over to the leaders of the summit as we're looking forward to the next week. So this is the work that brings the entire ecosystem of startups worldwide or in the 42 countries that are gathering here today. Work that says, beyond South Africa's presidency, what next? We know that America is the one that is going to be taking over, but the majority of the countries here, they do agree with the resolutions that have been taken here in the summit, in the last policy documents. They are saying, Minister, we want to make sure that we all advocate for the implementation of the resolutions that are being taken in this work that we do in South Africa.
And that was going to be my next question in terms of how do we ensure then that the work or the recommendations that we put in now continue beyond our presidency as South Africa?
Well, let me tell you that despite whatever that you may have read about you have seen, the countries that are participating in the Startup20, in majority, overwhelming support, they're saying this work must continue. They've learned something from South Africa, which is why one of the resolutions, the recommendations they are making is that let there be an institutionalization of the Startup20 so that it doesn't matter who becomes president, because the work of the G20 is done by the different countries. So we will be carrying this work over, handing over to those that are taking over after us, but most importantly, the steering committee that will be established for the institutionalized steering committee of the Startup20, the international steering committee of the Startup20 will continue the work that would have started today.
And Minister, maybe just for the benefit of our viewers, of course, talk to us about some of the unique challenges that South African startups or entrepreneurs face that are different to their worldwide counterparts.
Well, one of the challenges is the issue of access to digital infrastructure. South Africans, they all know that we are in the digital economy, but there's still issues of access to the digital infrastructure, but most importantly, the affordability of that, and of course, the access to finance. Because if you look at the report that was published by the IMF, they said South Africa has a credit gap of 350 billion rands. That is why we are focusing our energies in building partnerships. That is why we are supporting fully the initiative by the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition in bringing that 100 billion rands that the President spoke about of the Transformation Fund to bridge the gap that we are experiencing in the country. But most importantly, that is why we are also working with the international countries and the partners to say, let's invest in venture capital so that we expand the reach in terms of the access of finance. And this is what we are trying to deal with in response to the challenge that our people are complaining about.
I guess, Minister, in closing, what would be a successful Startup20 summit for you?
Well, for me, to say it's a successful Startup 20 is getting the institution, the team that I spoke about institutionalized, because it means we can have follow-ups, we can be able to monitor whatever that we have agreed to, but most importantly is ensuring that all the participants that are here, they go beyond the talks that they will have here, but to actually implementing in their respective areas, because government by its own will not be able to do this. This is the work that needs the entrepreneurs, the communities to support the entrepreneurs, the big business to support and open opportunities for the small enterprises, but most importantly for the policymakers to realize that we must really increase the funding that must go to the development of small businesses. And that will be the resolution of the summit. And I will say, hey, we have achieved it.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that was the Minister of Small Business Development, Minister Stella Ndabeni, talking to us about the importance of this summit and what, of course, a successful Startup 20 summit will look like when it comes to the work of this engagement group under the South African G20 presidency. Nosipho, Radebe, SABC News, Johannesburg.